Welcome to the deep dive. So, to you, the listener, I want you to picture something for a second. Think back to 2011.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a completely different internet.
Right, it really was. And in 2011, two teenage girls uploaded this like really poorly drawn, heavily pixelated cat girl animation to YouTube.
Just right out there into the void.
Exactly. And it was meant to be this totally handmade love letter to their favorite hobby. But instead, the internet basically turned it into a massive monument to cringe.
Oh, absolutely relentless mockery.
But here's the twist, and this is what we're really getting into today. The people mocking them the loudest, they were actually kind of mourning a part of themselves.
Yeah, which is such a crazy psychological dynamic to look back on.
Totally. So our mission today is figuring out what happens when this projectile of like pure, unfiltered, almost aggressive teenage sincerity is fired directly into the cynical, irony-drenched internet of the early 2010s.
And the blast radius of that exact collision gave us the cult classic YouTube animated series called Neko Sugar Girls.
Yes, Neko Sugar Girls. And honestly, that tension between sincerity and irony is kind of the defining feature of that specific era of the internet, right?
Oh, 100%. You had this massive collision. Like the internet was becoming this space heavily regulated by sarcasm and being cool.
Right, the whole I don't care about anything vibe.
Exactly. And
Yep.
then you have these two young creators. They went by the handles Rococo Coding and Ringo Blossom, and they just refused to put up any defensive shields.
Not at all. I just put their whole hearts into it.
Yeah, they animated, they wrote, and they voiced the entire thing completely by themselves. And to fully understand the cultural footprint of Neko Sugar Girls, we really have to transport ourselves back to that pre-algorithm 2011 YouTube.
Because it wasn't the highly curated feed we have today.
No, not at all. It was still a bit of a Wild West, just a place for this unoptimized, chaotic creation.
And we also have to remember that anime had a totally different cultural cachet back then. Like today, you can pull up Netflix and watch 10 different beautifully produced series. It's a massive global mainstream industry.
All right, everyone watches anime now.
But in the late 2000s and early 2010s, especially on the Western internet, being a massive anime fan, particularly like an otaku, it still carried a very real social stigma.
Oh, definitely. You were the weird kid.
Yeah, you didn't openly broadcast that enthusiasm unless you were fully prepared to be made fun of in the school cafeteria.
But Rococo Coding and Ringo Blossom, they just leaned in completely. They did not care.
They gave us a handmade flash animation that was basically an absolute fever dream of early internet aesthetics.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly were viewers looking at when they clicked play on episode 1?
Well, honestly, they were hit with just a massive sensory overload.
Like blindingly so.
Yeah. The visual language of the show is so intensely saturated. We are talking blinding pastel color palettes, massive shining eyes that like literally take up half the character's face.
The cat ears, the MS Paint style backgrounds.
All of it. But it wasn't just the visuals. The audio was incredibly raw.
Oh man, the audio. It's so crunchy. It really is. The girls voiced the characters in their literal bedrooms.
Right.
So you can hear the room tone, you hear the static, maybe like a desk fan whirring in the background.
It's just this unfiltered distillation of being young, loving a niche subculture, and just throwing your art out there.
Right. Watching it, it feels like a visual sugar rush.
Yeah. Or, I like to think of it as stumbling across an overstuffed middle school scrapbook. You know the kind.
Oh, absolutely, with the gel pens.
Exactly. Where every single emotion isn't just written down, it's underlined 3 times in glitter pen with like a dozen heart stickers all around the margins.
There's the perfect analogy.
Because if a character feels sad in Neko Sugar Girls, they don't just frown. These enormous screen-filling tears well up.
And if there's a moment of emotional weight, literal sparkles cascade across the screen.
Yes. The background suddenly shifts into these intense, swirling gradients of pink and lavender.
And that's actually a really crucial point.
Yeah.
Because the emotion and the decoration, they're the exact same gesture here.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Well, they aren't just adding sparkles to make a sad scene look pretty. The sparkles literally are the feeling.
Oh, I see.
In the text, we see this described as the aesthetics of overflow. If you look at the roots of Japanese Kawaii culture, the culture of cuteness, which Western teenagers were eagerly absorbing through Tumblr and DeviantArt back then.
Right. The early weeaboo era.
Exactly. You realize something fundamental. Kawaii is not just occasionally excessive, it is constitutively excessive. It requires that excess to function at all.
So it operates entirely through accumulation.
Precisely.
So cuteness is basically a pile-on effect. You need more bows, more sparkles, more pink, just more sweetness stacked on top of sweetness until it completely overwhelms your senses.
And you see that taken to its absolute extreme in this show. The screen is so dense with decoration, the expression exceeds containment at every single level.
So they weren't failing to be subtle.
No, not at all.
Well,
When you look through that lens, they were succeeding at being kawaii in a mode of total, unblinking commitment.
but okay, let's talk about the flip side of that aesthetic commitment. Because the actual technical reality of watching it is, it's rough.
Oh, it is undeniably rough.
Characters don't really walk. They sort of just slide across these static backgrounds.
And the facial expressions are stuck in these rigid, repetitive loops.
Yeah, it's very visibly a limited amateur flash animation made by kids who are just figuring out the software as they go.
But what's fascinating here is how that exact technical limitation actually elevates the intimacy of the project.
Intimacy. How so?
Because the animation is so stiff and looping, it creates this profound puppet theater intimacy.
Puppet theater intimacy. I like that phrase.
Right. The viewer is never allowed to just sink back and forget that they are watching something made by human hands.
You can feel the creators on the other side of the screen.
Exactly. Every jagged line, every sliding background, it serves as this constant flashing reminder of the hours and hours of tedious work these two teenage girls put into it.
It reminds me of receiving a hand-knitted sweater from a relative,
Oh, yeah.
where maybe some of the stitches are dropped or, one sleeve is a little longer than the other.
But that doesn't ruin it.
No. The drop stitches are the very things that prove a living, breathing human being sat there hour after hour and made it just for you. The technical failure or imperfection is just undeniable evidence of the labor of love.
And remember, they were doing it for absolutely no other reason than because they loved it.
Right. There was no monetization back then. No brand deal waiting for them.
Just pure, unadulterated devotion to making something with your best friend.
Which is so sweet. But that's exactly why I struggle to understand the sheer vitriol they received.
Yeah, the backlash was intense.
It feels wildly disproportionate. Like, I look at this and see harmless teenagers pouring their hearts into a passion project. But the internet didn't just ignore it or chuckle at it.
No, it went massively viral as a monument to cringe.
It was mocked relentlessly. Thousands of people shared it specifically to tear it down. So why did this sparkly, glitchy cartoon provoke such a vicious, organized response?
Well, the sheer volume of that backlash actually makes sense when you understand cringe as a regulatory mechanism.
Regulatory mechanism, like policing behavior.
Exactly. In the early 2010s internet, cringe was the ultimate weapon used to police enthusiasm. It functioned as this strict boundary line between, passionate engagement and what the internet deemed embarrassing overinvestment.
Right, because witnessing someone care too much or want something too openly, it produces this very specific kind of discomfort in the viewer.
And Neko Sugar Girls violated every single unwritten rule of internet survival.
Because they didn't frame the project with even an ounce of ironic distance.
None. There was no winking at the camera.
No self-deprecating joke in the description box, no little disclaimer saying, haha, we know this is bad, please don't be mean.
They just made something they genuinely loved in a ode of total, unguarded earnestness.
And from within the logic of internet cringe culture, stripping away your ironic armor like that is absolutely disqualifying. It makes you a massive target.
It really does. But underneath all that mockery, there was an incredible paradox driving the virality.
What was the paradox?
Well, people weren't just watching this show once, leaving a mean comment and moving on. They were obsessed with it.
Oh, true. They quoted the dialogue everywhere.
They made fan art, they remixed the audio, they kept returning to the episodes year after year.
When I think about that era, to you listening, think about the sheer panic of looking back at your own early Facebook or MySpace statuses.
Oh, God, the horror.
Right. Posting those super melodramatic song lyrics because you had a crush, or typing out these highly emotional, entirely unself-aware rants.
We all did it.
We did. But society, and specifically the internet, trains you very quickly to scrub that out of your personality. We learn to bury the part of us that cares too much.
Yeah, it gets socially beaten out of you.
So when millions of people dogpiled on Neko Sugar Girls, it almost feels like they were punishing these creators for failing to learn the same miserable lesson the rest of us had already internalized.
Exactly. And this raises an important question. If it was just a bad, embarrassing cartoon, Why the sustained fascination?
Right. Why couldn't people look away?
The answer lies in that exact projection. The people who were mocking Neko sugar girls online were often young, intensely enthusiastic internet users themselves.
So they were basically looking in a funhouse mirror.
Yes. The paradox is that the thing being mocked was simultaneously the thing being mourned.
Wow. So they were watching a state of freedom they kind of wish they still had.
When viewers laughed at these two teenage girls, they were really laughing at a version of themselves they had been forced to bury.
The state of being helplessly in love with something.
And creating from that love without calculating how the world would judge it. The total sincerity of the show was compelling because it documented a psychological landscape that the viewers actually really missed.
So if being your true, enthusiastic self makes you a massive target for internet mockery, you really only have two choices, right? You either hide or you become something else entirely.
Which brings us to the avatars.
Yes. The actual avatars the creators chose to represent themselves in the show because they didn't animate themselves as human girls.
No, they chose to be Nekos, human-cat hybrids.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Choosing to be a cat girl isn't just a random stylistic quirk.
Not at all.
It reminds me of like picking a specific character class in a role-playing game or putting on a really heavy set of video game armor. You don't choose a non-human avatar online just to escape reality. Sometimes it's the exact mechanism that gives you the alibi to act out your most honest emotions without facing real-world consequences.
That is so spot on. And that dynamic actually has a formal name in sociology and cultural studies. It's called a somatic symbolic vehicle.
A somatic symbolic vehicle. Okay, break that down for us.
So you are basically using a specific body shape or physical form to express feelings that ordinary human identity simply doesn't allow you to express.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the Neko archetype is incredibly persistent across pop culture and global fandoms for a very specific reason. A cat occupies a unique cultural space.
Because it's domestic,
Right.
but it's also wild.
Exactly. It is cute, but it remains entirely unpredictable. It lives in our human world, but it is fundamentally other.
And when you think about a human teenager living in the real world, especially a young girl, she is constantly policed by social norms.
Oh, heavily policed.
There is this immense crushing pressure on young women to be accommodating, to be mature, to swallow their intense emotional needs so they don't seem, dramatic.
But a cat girl.
Mm-hmm.
A Neko operates by a completely different set of rules.
Right.
She can be openly affectionate. She can be entirely sensory-driven. A Neko character can literally demand to be held or demand to be fed sweets.
Just fully expressing deep, restless emotional needs.
Yes, and doing all of that without being pathologized by society.
Because if a human teenager demands constant attention and affection, society says, grow up, you're being too needy, you're taking up too much space.
But if a cat girl does it,
It's just her nature.
exactly, the catness provides this massive permission structure. It is a highly functional tool that allows these creators to feel their feelings out loud.
So it's not escapism at all. It's a site of radical freedom.
We see this pattern frequently, actually, where groups facing intense social pressure utilize hybrid or non-human identities to experiment with expressing themselves safely.
It allows them to bypass the policing of their own desires.
Precisely.
So, okay, we've decoded the glittering visual language. We understand the armor of cringe culture that the internet was wearing.
Yeah.
And we know why the creators chose the safety of the Neko archetype.
Right.
But if we strip all of that away, all the meta context, and look at the actual narrative core of Neko Sugar Girls, like beneath the candy, the vague magical drama, and the occasional weird antagonist, what were they actually writing a story about?
Well, despite the chaotic surface noise, the deepest subject of the series is purely and simply friendship.
Friendship.
Yeah, the emotional spine of the entire project rests entirely on the relationship between the two main characters, Kaneko and Hitomi.
All the magical plot lines are basically secondary.
Completely secondary. The actual life or death stakes of the show revolve around whether these two girls are okay
Right.
and whether they have each other.
Which honestly maps so perfectly onto the reality of being a 13 or 14-year-old girl.
Oh, it really does.
It captures that dyadic best friendship. For anyone listening who has experienced that specific mode of youth, you know that your relationship with your best friend is so all-encompassing, it literally feels like a total universe built for two.
But the rest of the world just fades into the background.
Totally. And the aha moment here is that the clumsy amateur animation actually strips away the distraction of sophisticated plotting. You are just left with pure emotional stakes. I need you, do not leave me.
And in that specific subcultural register, The boundary between romantic and platonic love is practically non-existent.
It all just blurs together.
Exactly. The love between these best friends involves genuine longing. It involves deep devotion. And like you said, the absolute paralyzing terror of losing one another.
It's a story about the bliss of being fully known and accepted by one other person.
And what's wild about that is the sheer emotional literacy the show manages to pull off, despite everything else.
Yeah. The characters genuinely miss each other, they need each other, they fear for each other's safety. Those are complex, heavy emotional landscapes for kids to write.
But there are entirely genuine performances. Neko Sugar Girls doesn't try to intellectually analyze this friendship from a distance.
It simply inhabits it, fully, and without a drop of embarrassment.
It renders a real, beating emotional heart, using the only vocabulary its creators had access to at the time.
Which was sparkles, sweat drops, massive anime tears, and the color pink.
Yes. And the clumsiness of that delivery does not invalidate the profound sincerity of the message.
It is genuinely moving when you step back and look at it without the lens of irony.
It really is.
Which kind of brings us to where we are today, because the legacy of Neko Sugar Girls has evolved dramatically. We are not trapped in the 2011 cringe era anymore. Yeah, over the last decade, the cultural conversation has shifted toward, well, retrospective tenderness. People are looking back at the artifacts of the early internet and recognizing the humanity in them.
We are finally starting to critically dismantle cringe culture.
Asking the real structural questions.
Exactly. Like, what does calling something cringe actually accomplish? Whose expressions are we policing? Who gets the privilege of being sincere in public without being punished for it?
And what I find so deeply inspiring about all of this is the resilience of Rococo Coding and Ringo Blossom.
Oh, their resilience is incredible.
They faced global virality. They watched thousands of strangers ridicule their most sincere, unguarded teenage feelings. And yet, neither creator ever repudiated their work.
They didn't panic and delete the channel in shame.
No. Over the years, they gave measured responses, ranging from acceptance to ambivalence, but they let the work stand, they held their ground.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason the work still stands, the reason we are talking about it more than a decade later, is because it functions as an incredibly precise historical document.
A time capsule.
A flawless time capsule of a specific subcultural moment. It captures the early 2010s collision of Western youth absorbing kawaii aesthetics. It captures an era when flash animation was an accessible amateur tool, and when platforms like YouTube were still spaces for pure, unmonetized creation.
Yeah, before every single hobby had to be turned into a side hustle.
Right.
And before every piece of art had to be fed into an algorithm just to maximize engagement.
But far more importantly, it documents the specific emotional texture of a certain kind of girlhood.
A girlhood that is intensely relational, aesthetically voracious, and just hungry for beauty in a world that rarely takes the desires of teenage girls seriously.
Neko Sugar Girls proves that sincerity might be deeply uncomfortable, and it might be wildly unfashionable at times, but it is ultimately much more durable than irony.
The joke fades, but the love remains. So, what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a glitchy, pixelated, sparkly flash animation that the internet loved to mock. But when you strip away the cynical armor of the era, what you're left with is a profound, handmade love letter.
A love letter to a specific aesthetic.
To a blossoming sense of selfhood. And to the total, all-encompassing universe of teenage friendship. It was made from love, by two kids giving something they cared about their genuine, unironic care.
And the fact that it still resonates today means that the viewers who initially mocked it might finally be capable of receiving the gift they were actually being shown all those years ago.
They finally dropped their own armor.
Yes, they finally dropped the armor.
I think that's a perfect place to land. It completely reframes how you look at the internet, both then and now. So, to you, the listener, we want to leave you with a thought to mull over. Today, modern social media is absolutely obsessed with authenticity.
We constantly praise influencers and creators for being raw, relatable, and real.
But if cringe culture taught us to aggressively suppress our most unguarded, enthusiastic selves a decade ago, how much of the authenticity we consume today is actually just a highly calculated, heavily armored performance?
That's a great question.
And underneath whatever armor you are wearing right now, what totally unironic, excessive, deeply uncool passion project is sitting inside of you just waiting for the courage to be let out? Maybe it's time to put down the armor, pick up the glitter pen, and see what happens.